Hello, everyone. This is Shannon Torrance, and this is Magic is Real. Today I'm talking with Wendy Rose Williams. Wendy is a near-death experiencer, and in this interview, she shares the details of her NDE. These days, Wendy is a hypnotherapist who specializes in past life regression. She's also a Reiki master, certified spiritual teacher, author, and speaker. I hope you enjoy listening to this conversation as much as I enjoyed having it. If you like this video and want to see more like it, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Thank you so much. Here's my conversation with Wendy Rose Williams. Hello, I'm Shannon Torrance, and welcome to Magic is Real. Today, I am so honored to have a guest that I'm really excited to speak with. Her name is Wendy Rose Williams. Wendy is a near-death experiencer, and she is now a hypnotherapist who specializes in past life regression and between life regression, which we'll talk about later on. She is an author, a speaker, and a certified spiritual teacher. How did I do, Wendy? Does that describe you in a nutshell?
That's wonderful. Thank you, Shannon, for that warm welcome. That's perfect.
Thank you so much for being here. So I just want to give a shout out to Kirsty Salisbury, who I'm going to post her link below. I was introduced to Wendy because I listened to Kirsty Salisbury's wonderful podcast, which is called Let's Talk Near Death. And I heard this interview with Wendy, and it was it was like an hour and a half, and I was in the grocery store, couldn't even concentrate on what I was buying. It was such a compelling story, but you're such a beautiful speaker, so I immediately wanted to meet you, and I appreciate your time today.
Well, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So I guess what we'll do is we'll just launch right in now. Tell us a little bit about yourself, perhaps whatever you're comfortable sharing in terms of your background and what you kind of how your life looked before you had a near death experience, in terms of maybe anything you want to share, but also what spiritual beliefs did you hold before you experienced the other
Sure.
side?
Sure. That's a great question. Well, the NDE that I had was in 1997. So at the time, I was a 36-year-old, uh, soon to be mother for the second time. And we were just thrilled to be expecting because I'd had two ectopic pregnancies and years of infertility. So it was just a really big deal. And I was working full time. We had a toddler. I had always worked. I had an MBA in marketing. So just both of us were, super, super busy with work, but also, thrilled to have the family. And spiritually, I just really didn't have it on my radar very much. I was a Christian, but we just didn't go to church that often. I did believe in God. I did believe in Jesus. I did believe in angels, but honestly, that's about as far as it went. So just not on the radar very much, as I said. And so it was just a really big surprise because I was working at home and was 10 weeks pregnant. I'd had the first visit with the OBGYN only, and just was having all this um, feeling of just really really bad. I'm missing the word agita.
Mm-hmm.
Just feeling like, just so much upset in my abdomen and in my system, and it didn't really make sense to me to be having so much reflux at that point because I hadn't had it before. So I'd mentioned it to the doctor, and they just said, well, Mylanta is safe, so go ahead and take that. So I'm trying to work at home, but I just can't get comfortable. And what was happening too at that time was I was having precognitive dreams. And I didn't know what precognitive dreams were. I didn't know that you could be having that sort of a highlight of coming events, of something that might be coming up in your life. And what I kept dreaming about almost every night was just these terrible storms at sea where a ship was just tearing apart and all the masts are falling off and all the winches and cleats are just all this ripping and tearing, and then the ship would go down. So I kept having this dream, and I'm trying to work at home, trying to focus, but I don't feel right. And I started to feel this feeling of impending doom, which I had never felt. I'd never experienced depression. I'd never just had that type of a feeling before. And I just kept going into the bathroom thinking, oh my goodness, I'm going to be sick. There's just something really off that I cannot explain. And I just suddenly had this terrible searing pain in my abdomen. I literally looked down thinking, oh my goodness, I have been stuck with a knife. I mean, there just was so much pain. And I passed out on the bathroom floor. And then, huge surprise, I came to only because there was this very insistent voice just calling my name again and again and again. And I just this urgency to it: Wendy, wake up, wake up, wake up. And so I open my eyes, I'm laying on the bathroom floor, and the room is just lit up with the most beautiful light, this huge, just beams and rays of light. And I could sense that there were like 4 or 5 beings there. And I just immediately heard in my head, those are angels. There's your whole bathroom is filled with angels. And that really, it took me aback because I never expected it to happen. It just was such an amazing occurrence. But the angel was very specific and he said, you need to call for help now or you're going home. So I knew exactly what he meant was I was going to die if I didn't get medical attention. And my response to him was, okay, but I can't walk. And his response was really interesting. He said, you just have to be willing to try. Just try and get up on your hands and knees. If you're willing to try, we can help you. So the minute I did, I felt like I was lifted, just flown is the only way I can describe it. It felt like it was a couple inches off the floor. And suddenly I'm like right at my nightstand where the landline phone is. Call my husband at work. Because the angel didn't say call 911. 911 doesn't even enter my mind. If there's ever a moment to call 911, that would have been a good one. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't enter my mind. And my husband was a really great choice. He worked 5 minutes from home. And the miracles continued because he answered his phone right away. I have never reached him at work. I don't think before or since that moment. So that was just perfect. And I give him a lot of credit because all I said was, I need you to come home now. You need to drive me to the hospital right now. Something's really wrong. And he just said, okay, I'll be right there. Didn't ask me a single question. And I could, just was on his way. So that gave me just enough time to call the OBGYN physician office. And they said, okay, you need to come right now to the office immediately. I said, yep, my husband's on my way. We'll be there in 15 minutes. And they said, great. As soon as you get here, don't park the car, because they were in an office at the hospital. So, big parking garage, and that can take you a lot more time. They said, just pull up to the delivery door right by our door and we'll meet you with a wheelchair. So great, we have our plan. We get there and I'm just like doubled over in the car, like begging him not to hit any pothole because I'm in so much pain. And we get whisked up into the OBGYN office and they took me straight into ultrasound and they couldn't visualize anything. And my abdomen is just distending. It's just getting bigger and bigger. And I'm looking at it going, what does that mean? And I didn't have a sense of miscarrying. I had never miscarried, but there was no vaginal bleeding. And I've got this big abdomen and I'm thinking, oh my goodness. And my initial thought in the bathroom had been an organ burst. That was just the only thing I could think of and what I felt like was going on, but I didn't know which organ. Well, little did I know they can't see anything on the ultrasound because there's just so much blood. And what it was my uterus had ruptured, the fundus specifically, and I didn't know that's an aorta. Wow. So I'm just pumping out this blood into the wrong place in the body. It's not going in the bloodstream where it should be. It's just, coming out of that aorta at the top of the uterus. So the ultrasonographer kept her game face on, but I can see something's wrong with what we're looking at on the screen. And she said, I'm going to go get the physician. I'll be right back. So my husband and I are kind of like looking at each other like, this is not good.
Yeah.
And she returns immediately with a physician and with a nurse midwife with her. And the physician took one look at the screen and he tried to adjust it. And he's like, okay, we need to admit you to the floors right now. There's some major abdominal bleed going on and we can't visualize anything. We can't see where it's from. So I was then admitted up onto the floors. So questions to that point, is that making sense?
Complete sense. I think people might have a question about when you're communicating with these, as we call them, angels, for lack of a better word. Um, do you hear it in your mind, or do you actually, to you in that state, do you hear it as an external voice, or do you just have a telepathic knowing?
That's a great question. I happen to be really clairaudient. I
Mhm.
hear spirits and guides very, very well. So I was hearing it. I mean, I could see these huge beams of light, but I didn't physically see what I would think of as an angel. I didn't see wings, but I did get the sense that they were very large beings, like 7, 8, 9 foot. And we had a good sized bathroom, but I mean, just feeling like there were like four or so of them there, it just filled the bathroom because of their presence and
Yeah.
just the beauty and the majesty of it.
Which is so funny because it's such a sort of an oxymoron of you're in the bathroom, which is typically known as
Right.
like the least beautiful. I mean, it can be a beautiful
Right.
room, but it's sort of like the least elegant room in the house,
Right.
just because of what it's used for. And there you have there's this enormous light and beauty in that room, which is astounding. So now take us to you're going into, I assume, surgery. Are they? Is that the next
Well,
move
I
for
was
you?
actually admitted onto the
Oh, the
floors.
floors. Yes.
And so I'm admitted into the unit in the hospital. And luckily, as I said, the OBGYN office was right there at the
Yeah.
hospital. And they discussed doing surgery, but first they wanted to hang some blood and get some transfusions going right away. And that became a stumbling block too. They asked me if I knew my blood type, which I certainly did. And I could hear the nurse calling the blood bank. We have a central blood bank in the Seattle area. Not every hospital has its own blood, so she was calling the blood bank and learning that there had been a major train accident a few days before. So they didn't happen to have any A negative blood available right at that moment. So that caused a delay. And also, there was some thinking of, I mean, the body's amazing at healing itself.
Yeah.
So could the body, were we like already past the tipping point, and was I going to be able to heal myself from
Hmm.
that point? And so I just was instructed, okay, just lay flat in the bed, do not get up even to go to the bathroom. You just need to lie flat, and we're going to get blood on board as soon as we can. And also, I was resisting surgery. Certainly the physician brought it up, but I just was it's like, hey, I'm pregnant and we don't know what we're
Yeah.
operating on, and you don't have blood.
Yeah.
So it was prudent to wait. So we actually, of course, I'm being closely monitored, and then they did get the blood within whatever X number of hours, and it was just so uncomfortable being transfused. And I've had transfusions before, but I think what was going on was I was losing so much so quickly that they were
Just
really
rushing in.
trying to, had
Yeah.
that valve turned on full. So I am just, crying and howling at times from just that pain in my left arm. Was hurting much more than my abdomen at that point. So it was about 3 days and they're checking my hematocrit each day. What's my level of blood levels, and how am I doing? And it just was dropping and dropping and dropping. That hematocrit's just a major indicator that you are bleeding out. So I think it was day 3. The physician just looked me in the eye and said, "We need to do surgery." I said, "I know, I understand." So we agreed to do surgery the next morning. I was going to be the first surgery of the morning, and it was going to be 2 OB/GYN physicians, my own doctor in my own community hospital that I was very familiar with, And they also did a lot of maternity work. They were doing about 5,000 births a year at that time. So I was very comfortable and happy because they did discuss, should we be transferring you downtown? Should we be sending you to the big teaching hospital? And I just really, we discussed it and kind of went through the pros and cons. I said, I'm really happy to be here and feel that I'm in good hands. And I think that was really important because, you've just got to have that psychology when you're
Yeah.
going into that sort of a surgery.
And
So please
oh, I
go
meant
ahead.
to ask, no, I actually, sorry to interrupt, but I actually wanted to ask at this time, how were you feeling other than pain? Because you had seen these angels. Did you, or I don't know what we're calling them, but if they,
Angels.
angels,
Mhm.
yeah, you had seen these angels. Were you still sort of in shock about that? And did it make you feel safer having had this contact with them, or was it all just kind of a blur? And was there fear for you about what the outcome would be?
Those are great questions. There was absolutely, I was thrilled that I saw them. I didn't know how to process it because there hadn't been enough time. And I was in so much pain and I was just so exhausted. That was the number one feeling that was going on was I just felt like the gas tank was below empty. I was having trouble maintaining consciousness. I just even when I was right in the middle of a conversation with the doctor or the nurse, I would just like feel myself just like slip away and I would like go to sleep or like go on another plane. I just really didn't care. And that was really concerning me that I was
Mm-hmm.
like so detached
Yeah.
and just, kind of giving up is the best way I can put it
Mm-hmm.
in those couple of days before the surgery. But once we agreed we were going to do the surgery and that really hard decision was made, I was trying to relax the night before the surgery. You get your dinner so darn early, it's a hospital. And I was trying to relax and just build up some strength. And I was trying to visualize a positive outcome. I was like, okay, let's just see the best positive outcome because I was feeling a lot of fear. Was I going to make it? Was the baby going to make it? What was going to happen? Was I going to recover? Was this going to be it? And the minute I visualized a really great outcome, I popped out of my body and I felt so I'm laying there alone in the hospital bed. It's maybe 8 o'clock in the evening, the night before surgery. I'm alone and I feel
Mm-hmm.
fantastic because not only is there no more pain and no more worry, but I felt like me. I felt like I was more and more myself, is the best way I can describe it. And I remember just rising up higher and higher. And I'm like looking back at my body on the bed. And I had kind of a humorous moment because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, she is whiter than the sheets. Look at that woman. I mean, she's really in a bad way. And then I thought, wait a minute, I'm referring to myself in the third person. That's interesting. But that
Mm-hmm.
detachment also concerned me because I just really didn't care very much. And I also had this really funny moment. I thought, my goodness, couldn't they have at least brushed her hair? She just looks like a wreck. So,
Yeah.
was still enough in the, human world of, oh, wow, look at that. We've been in bed for days and it's just looking pretty messy
Mm-hmm.
because I hadn't been able to take a shower or bathe. And I just let go of that. I thought, okay, whatever. She's fine. Whatever that is fine. And I just like kept looking up because I could see this light. And I was so intrigued and like so pulled to it and so interested to explore. So I just floated out of the ceiling of the hospital room, was my perception, and went up to the light. And I did at that point, I must have seen or heard something about NDEs. I didn't know very much about them at all, but I must have heard the concept of a tunnel because I immediately thought, oh, please don't make me walk through this long tunnel. I am way too tired.
Yeah.
And the minute I have that thought, this beautiful, pristine, huge escalator comes in and there's no one on it. And I know it's just for me. So I put my deflated little self, I'm looking kind of like a beach ball with like half the air out of it. I just see myself as this like big white orb, but I'm not looking right. So I just kind of like lean on the, the railing of the escalator and go up and up and up. And the minute I get to the top, and I don't have a sense of time, it just felt like a really long time, but it felt like right there. Time was really shifting, time was changing. And the minute I got to the top of the escalator, I could see this amazing welcome home party. I could see all these orbs of light. And it just felt like all the people who just loved me the most. And I could see those angels there. I could see and sense all four of my grandparents, which was super interesting because I knew my mom's parents well. I'd been close with them and had lived in their home for several years. So I really felt I knew them well. But my dad's parents had died before I was ever born. So it was really neat to be able to recognize and say, oh, wow, there's my paternal grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
Just nice to reunite with you again. And they just started letting me know what was what. And it was the one same male angel was narrating again. And he said, welcome home. We're so glad you're here. And they immediately had given me this huge group hug. And I just was basking in that because it was unconditional. And we don't get unconditional love very often. So that was just, I could have just stayed in that moment forever. It just was so perfect. And there's just no judgment. And you're just, you know, just unconditionally welcomed and loved and just seen as being perfect was just really, really a big deal. And as they let go of me, I noticed they were keeping me like right there. I'd only taken one step at home off the top of that escalator, and they were right there. And I was kind of like a little kid. I was kind of like trying to like jump and like see over them because it's like, oh my gosh, I want to explore. I'm home. Let me at it.
That's really
why
cool.
are you holding me back?
Mm-hmm.
And what the angel then started narrating, that they were so welcome, so happy to welcome me home. I'd done nothing wrong. He said that was very important for me to know. And also that I was absolutely welcome to stay, but that I needed to listen to him very clearly because I needed to make a choice and we didn't have much time. I needed to make the choice right away, or I wouldn't be able to go back to the body because the body wouldn't be sustainable. So I'm listening. Of course, I'm all ears. And what he wanted me to know was if I chose to go back to my body, I would have the surgery and it would be successful. He wanted me to know I would fully recover. And he wanted me to know my baby would be born healthy. So this was a gift. This was just a really big deal to now know this and not have any more fear about the surgery the next day and what the outcome was going to be. And he had one more thing to add, which was I also needed to know if I chose to go back, life would be very difficult, likely for many years, because I was not on my life path and I wasn't living my purpose. So naturally, I responded, "Oh my goodness, that I want to be doing the right thing. I want to be living my purpose. Please tell me what's my purpose? What am I missing? What am I not doing?" And he just shook his head. So I'm not getting any more information from him. So I'm looking around at all the others thinking, "Okay, come on. Please, I hope because there were about 20 people there, 20 souls, and I hoped one of the other ones would give me some inkling, some information. And they just started being silly. They're like putting duct tape over their mouth. They're like locking keys. They're like throwing the keys away. I'm like, okay, I get it. I just need to be very privileged with what's happened so far, and then I'm being given such a respectful choice
Mm-hmm.
whether I want to go back. because as I've studied NDEs since then in the intervening years, because it's been 23 years, so many people feel that they were told it's not your time, and they feel like they were really like pushed or shoved even and just sent back very unceremoniously. And I was given a choice. And the other gift I was given was I got one more huge group hug. And that group hug, I realized the second time, it wasn't just unconditional love. They were absolutely downloading and giving me energy, because I think I really, really needed energy to have a successful surgery the next day.
Yeah.
So that was what occurred. And then just back down on that long escalator, and just this gentle pop back into the body. And it was just that simple to return. And I'm kind of like waving over my shoulder as I'm leaving, and they're all like cheering me on, like, you can do it.
Wow.
Go live your life, and have your life. And I'm trying to put aside, okay, I'll have to deal with, one thing at a time. What am I not doing? What's my purpose that I'm missing?
Right. Well, if they told us everything, we'd have nothing to learn from. And it makes
Exactly.
perfect sense that they wouldn't give you all the answers. The whole point of being here is to figure it out for yourself and to learn and grow and experience these unforeseen things and figure out, how do I navigate this, and what choices are in my highest and best good and in the highest and best good of those around me. And that's so interesting. And I love the fact that though they're spirits, they're people. I mean, at least some of them have visited before and have lived as humans, and some, I believe, the taller ones that we think of as more. I always forget which is which. Is the angels and the spirit guides, but there's one that apparently has lived here before, and the others are their job is to be up there or over there, not up there, but
Right.
just it's not necessarily in another place. It's kind of in the same place. We just can't see it, but
Higher
um,
vibration.
yeah, it's just a different vibration. That's a wonderful way to look at it. I think of it as another dimension. But that's so interesting. So, when you came back into your body, was it, I know you said it felt pretty peaceful immediately. Was it very jarring to come back into the physical after
It
having
really
just,
it really was. And I feel like they gave me just like a really easy experience of just coming back into the physical, was just totally natural. And I was pretty wide-eyed, like trying to process what had just happened, because it felt like such an immense gift. And interestingly, I didn't talk about it for over 20 years. And I didn't know that that was another hallmark of having an NDE, is it just can take a long time to integrate.
yeah,
And our Western medicine healthcare system, I mean, it's just been recently that they've made some nice inroads in
hmm,
certain locations where there are, whether it's through social work or pastoral care or your own physician or nurse, some of them are actually saying, did you have any, particularly with like a heart attack type patient or someone that where they observed see, my ND wasn't observed by the medical personnel. So they just didn't have a reason to ask me about it.
right.
And I chose not to share it, because I just, as I said, it just was a lot to integrate and try and make sense of.
Yeah. Did you even tell your husband?
Um, I tried to, but we unfortunately were just really struggling with communication.
Yeah.
And what happened was, so I was then in the hospital for just a few more days, and went home, and it was going to be 6 weeks of bed rest essentially, to just try and really rebuild, because I'd rebuild my blood supply and get my strength back, because I'd gone home quite a few quarts low,
Yeah.
because I just had lost more blood than they had been able to transfuse. And then, of course, then this big surgery too, also. And then just also the worry, even though I was told the baby was going to be born healthy, it still was, very much on my mind, because I was only 10 weeks pregnant when this
Right.
started. So that's just a long time to go to 40 weeks.
That's
And
astounding that the baby survived something so traumatic as
absolutely.
well.
I did appreciate the OB was able to be very specific with me. And I so appreciated that he had the conversation with me bedside and told me what a remarkable surgery it was. And he said, of course, the baby's, just so tiny, such a little peanut at that point in the gestation. And he said, your baby was just like so far down, like so tucked away. And of course, I guess they were visualizing the surgery through some sort of imaging because the way he was able to describe it to me. So I don't know if they had a CT arm in there or what they had, but they were definitely, it sounds like they were imaging at that time. And he says, and we were so up at the top of your uterus, just far from the baby. And we're just doing everything we could not to disturb that fetus as they did the surgical repair to just stitch it all up. But there was a question of, is this going to hold?
Yeah.
Because you think about, how much growth and how much pressure just gets put on that organ. So that question was there for during the entire duration of the pregnancy. And then there was also a question of how was the delivery going to go, and was it going to hold, and was the baby going to, through the contractions, come down safely vaginally, or was there going to be another tear, and would she move up into my heart and lungs, which could be life-threatening for me.
Right.
So, of course, I'm doing a lot of visualizations, down, down, down.
Yeah.
There will be no up.
Right. And now your daughter is born healthy, um, which must have just been such a relief and also elation for you, I hope. I hope it
It
wasn't as true.
was.
I hope that it was a beautiful experience for you. I know it can be difficult sometimes.
It
Um,
absolutely was. We were
yeah.
just thrilled that she was perfect. She was induced 1 week early because of concern. She was getting a little big, and my first daughter had been quite large also. So but just 1 week. So we knew, or felt confident that the lungs and everything was going to be really good. But it just keep that half a pound, since you're gaining approximately half a pound a week
Yeah.
at the end, baby weight,
Right.
baby size. So she was born, and it was a quick stay in the hospital. The hospital was so kind to me. I was absolutely amazed. They actually brought in an extra nurse and gave me one-on-one nursing, which I did not expect and did not know you could even ask for. But I was just so thrilled, and that really helped our nerves a lot
Yeah.
to know, that we were going to have that kind of care in case there was a medical emergency. So that certainly helped. But backtracking a little bit, what had happened and had gotten uh, very hard was after I'd gone back to work. So I recover at home for 6 weeks, go back into a job I love. I'm now, 3.5 months, 4 months pregnant, and I'd been in the job for 3 years. Glowing performance reviews, but all of a sudden, out of the blue, Friday afternoon, get called into my boss's office, and my heart just sank down to my knees when I walked in, because I'm not expecting any issue. I'm expecting, whatever conversation he needs to have, or maybe it's a have a great weekend. I'm just not expecting anything big. And I see HR sitting there, and I can read both their energy. It's like, oh my goodness, I know what this is.
Mm-hmm.
So I was laid off, and just absolutely devastated by it, because it just was like the worst possible timing. And we not only need my income, and I'm pregnant. This is not a wonderful time to go looking for a new job, but I also carry the health insurance for the entire family, and I'm pregnant. So that was just really a dark a dark day. And I did remember the angels saying things are going to get very hard,
Yes, they
and
do.
it may be for years. And what happened next was 1 week later to the day, my husband came home from work very late, like hours late. And I thought, oh, that's just, gosh, where the heck is he? I've rewarmed this dinner multiple times. And just the way he walked in the house, it was like a weight of the world on his shoulders. And he said, I have something really hard to tell you. And we have just gone to payless paydays. And my brain is like going round and round. And I'm like trying to put those two words together. I'm like, that's an oxymoron. How can you have a payless payday? What does that even mean? That's not a thing.
Yeah.
And he explained to me that his software company had to make some really hard decisions. He was one of 5 owners, and they had just laid off essentially almost their entire staff of 100 people. And he further explained that he would be working very long hours because he was going to have to be writing code and doing programming to fulfill contracts that they had already sold and had not finished the jobs on. And that he was going to be trying, they were all going to be trying to sell the company they felt was the best thing to do. So therefore, they needed to finish up the contracts that they had done. So I'm like, my jaw is like now on the floor. Like, what the heck? Because I'm not agreeing with his decision.
Right.
And he's not open to discussion.
Right.
So all I could think of to say was, okay, well, we'll figure it out. We'll work it through. It's just big curveball, and that's the way it
Yeah.
goes. And I asked him, okay, I know it's only just happening today, but have you filed for unemployment? And then he let me know, no, we're not eligible for unemployment because we're self-employed and we did not pay that insurance because it was cost prohibitive. So
Right.
now my jaw is really on the floor. It's like, okay, so you're going to be working massive hours, not looking for another job. I'm not finding a job. You don't have unemployment. We have only my unemployment, basically.
Right.
So, and I just kept thinking of that angel. It's like, okay, we just got to keep putting one foot in front of the other. We just
Yeah.
got to power through and, manage finances, cut costs, use some savings, run up the credit cards a bit, do what you have to do. Because we had a new home. We had just purchased a new home, maybe less than a year before that time period. So we've got, the hefty mortgage. And we also just purchased a brand new minivan because we thought we're going to have
For the
two
family.
babies.
Yeah.
I need the 2 sliding doors, getting them in and out of the car seats and all that. So, we've got some significant bills to pay, and we're just not in a good place here financially.
No.
So I thought, okay, the most responsible thing to do. He was really focused on work. He's got to sell the company. He's doing all this. And he said, I need you to take care of the home finances, figure us out, and I'll just follow your lead. So I was like, okay. So I was doing a lot of, budgeting and accounting and just everything I could. And I thought, okay, the most responsible thing to do would be contact our 2 big lenders, which is the mortgage and the new car, and let them know that we are looking for new positions. We both have MBA degrees. We both got, great professional careers and backgrounds, but let them know we're moving into new positions. And I expected to be able to negotiate and do
Right.
some, partial payments or skip a payment, with just full disclosure. And instead, both took the absolute hardball approach. And the bank where we had the home loan actually said to me, "Thanks for the heads up. We're going to initiate foreclosure as soon as you miss a payment. As soon as it is legally possible for us to foreclose, we'll be foreclosing." And I was just like, what the heck? And I had the same type of conversation regarding the minivan, and they said, "We'll be repossessing as soon as you miss your payments."
Right.
So there just was like no wiggle room. So we're looking at different options. Can't get new credit cards, not appropriate to get a loan. I was looking for a part-time job at that point, thinking, just do something until we get this figured out. And that was not turning up also. It just was a really hard dip to the economy. This was November of 1997 that this
Yeah.
happened. And it just really was moving from a recession into what's that expression? It's a recession when your neighbor's out of work, and it's a depression when you're out of work. And now we've both gone
Absolutely.
down. Um, so we went to Bank of Mom at that point.
Yeah, which you
Very,
do when you have no other options.
very, very grateful that we had a parent that was kind enough to sacrifice. And I mean, it wasn't easy for her, but she just must have taken a big breath, but just said, how much do you need? And I said, can we just do it month by month until we're both back to work? I don't want to ask you, until we need it. And it may be different amounts, different months.
Yeah.
And I just kind of walked her through all the budgeting and accounting I was doing. And she said, you're doing everything possible. I don't have any suggestions for you. So let's just start a note and we'll just keep track of what I need to lend you. And you guys absolutely should hold on to your home because I don't want you to lose that down
Yeah.
payment and all your investment in it. And obviously you also need a place to live. And same with the minivan. It's like you need the transportation.
Mm-hmm.
So she was very gracious and she helped us out. And then I went back to work into a new position. It was 3 months after the baby was born. So it worked out perfectly. I kind of gave myself a maternity leave, so to speak.
Yeah.
And my husband, ironically, got the company sold and went back into his new employment the Monday after our daughter was born. So I delivered on a Friday and he was there for that. And he helped me at home Saturday and Sunday. And then he was back to work in a new position. And I was kind of like, ah.
Wow. Well, and see how it all, even though it probably felt insurmountable, at the end of the day, you figured it out. You became resourceful. I'm sure you dug deep, and it doesn't, I think that's part of why we're here. A friend of mine
Yes.
and I were just saying, why is everything so hard all the time? And I said, well, I'm fully accepting of the fact that we're here to learn and grow. I understand that's why we're here. And I also am fully grateful for all the beautiful things that happen. And when it is easy, it's that much sweeter. I said, but sometimes I'm like, do we have to do really? It's just, do we have to go through all these hoops? Can't we just sort of float along? And
Glide
the answer is
through.
no. The answer is no. You can't. You
Right.
can do that when you cross over. But
Right.
it is a testament to just forging ahead, having faith. And I'm not saying not to minimize anybody's. I mean, there are people that it's just harder to do that. Maybe they're in a war-torn country and they just don't have the resources. But still, I think the human spirit somehow prevails and gets us through those times. And it just shows that we just keep fighting and we keep, praying or whatever it is that we do. And it somehow it works out most of the time. I think
Absolutely.
I don't want to minimize anybody's experience where it just hasn't worked out. But again, that's just part of the journey. And that's really just kind of an example of that, of what they told you it was going to be hard.
Yes.
And I know there was
Yes.
more after this. I know that that wasn't just sort of like, and, then we live
Right.
happily ever after. So
Right.
tell us what happened next.
Well, what happened, going back to that moment when I came home from the hospital with the newborn, I have to return to that because something else happened there. And so here I am thinking, oh my gosh, so lucky to have, just so fortunate that this worked out so well, and how incredibly precious she is because we went through this big, big curveball, and just to have her there and have her healthy. But we hadn't been home more than a day or two, and um, I had not heard the angels or spirit guides or whatever, that voice. Just I had not heard that deep truth until I was home with her as a brand new baby. And what I heard was, your contract with your husband is now complete. And I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know exactly what that means because I didn't understand the concept of soul contracts. I
Mhm.
believe that we pre plan our lives in a lot of ways because our soul's eternal. And if you look at this as adventure camp, or if you look at this as school, or if you look at this as a play run, whichever analogy works for you, our soul is just so amazingly resilient and so fearless, because isn't it all grand and easy to plan it when you're home with that
Oh
unconditional
yeah.
love, and just everything is perfect, and we can be very ambitious with our planning. And I didn't understand that we create these soul contracts, which are simply agreements.
Hmm.
And our soul wants to learn XYZ. So we can create these agreements with people. And I didn't know at that time, I didn't learn for years, that my soul contract with my husband was simply to have a long term marriage that we would both really grow from, and to have beautiful children together. And I could clearly hear the plural.
Yeah.
Well, we just had our second, and I didn't know that that meant that was going to really wrap up what we needed to learn together. And we stayed together. I did not share that with him. I thought that is just such a
Oh yeah.
hurtful thing to share. And I thought maybe it's pregnancy hormones. I don't know. I mean, you're just so all over the place with a newborn. You're so sleep deprived, and there are just a lot of hormones leaving your body. And I just had the surgery not that long before it too, so there just was a lot going on. So we stayed together and just did our very best to be respectful, and to be good friends, and good spouses. But I just wasn't in it. I just really wasn't in it, I'm sorry to say. I mean, that voice was just so clear. The clarity was really, really there. So our children were 6 and 8. Our daughters were 6 and 8 when we did divorce, and did our very best to have a very amicable, just very gentle, respectful divorce. And we just agreed that we were going to do a 50-50 residential schedule for the girls, and that we would never say anything against the other parent, because that is just so damaging,
Yeah.
and wouldn't put the kids in the middle. And we both also said we're going to make every effort to keep their lives as much the same as they are. So we went to a lot of effort, drive them to the same Girl Scout troop, and keep them in the same, you know, school, and just things like that. So again, my mom was very interesting how it came together. And she decided to relocate. She was living in Boston. We were in Seattle. She decided to come out and relocate because she'd been retired for a couple of years. And I'm the only child, so only grandchildren. And she said more and more people were just saying to her, well, Wendy's not going to move back. So why don't you consider moving out where she is? You said you've been out there and visited multiple times. You seem to like Seattle.
Yeah.
Why don't you consider moving out there? So that's what we did. So she relocated purposefully, right as we were divorcing, because she was a free agent. And that was so appreciated, because she could help do the driving for the kids. And she just helped be that wonderful glue, because you've got two parents running two households in two full-time jobs. So life is busy, and the girls were young. So I appreciated so much that she, really, really played a big role for all of us.
Yeah, I'm sure that helps too to have that not objective party necessarily, but because she's your mom, but just having them have that. It sounds like they had a lot of
Neutral
stability,
space.
that neutral space for the kid. Yeah, that sounds like it couldn't have gone any better in terms of how divorces go. Um, and so I feel like they did have that soft place to land in between
They
without all of the
did.
upheaval and
That's
having
what we
family.
that's what we tried to do, was to build a really soft landing spot for them, and just make life be the new normal.
Yeah.
And as the counselor put it to us, because we did go in for family counseling with all of us a couple of times, and he said, you're still a family.
Hmm.
Let's get rid of the broken family term, the dysfunctional. You're still a family, so let's just look at how do we get good respectful communication going between all of us. And he just looked at some really practical things like, why are you guys on 3 different phone plans?
Yeah.
On one family phone plan. And, Elizabeth, he said to my mother, you need to learn how to text. And he just kind of like gave us some things that helped the family, because we were across 3 households now,
Mm-hmm.
that just helped smooth communication and that sort of thing. So we rebuilt our lives in the best ways that we could. And our daughters were really thriving and doing well. Um, by the time they were about 12 and 14, I felt like we'd really reached a good place. And I had built a new home with my mother. She was living next door in a duplex. So it was kind of this ideal
Yeah.
situation, and close enough to my former husband that we could, do the drives for the shared custody. And so the girls are early teens and life's going really well. And I've got my career established really well again. And it just was time to meet a nice guy. And surprise, surprise, that's where the spiritual awakening came. It wasn't through the NDE. I then was able to process and incorporate it all. But
Mm-hmm.
what happened was hysterical. So I asked girlfriends, how do you meet a nice guy nowadays? It's been like 25 years for me. I have no clue. And I'm really busy. I'm like not meeting anybody through church or through friends, or obviously I'm not going to go out to bars. It's not college. So what do you do? And girlfriend said, oh, well, that's really easy. You go on match.com. And I'm like, what is match.com? I have no idea what you're talking about. So they explained, well, there's this thing called online dating nowadays, Wendy. And they helped me put together a profile, put in a few pictures, just, state my given geography of where I'm looking to match with someone, because Match at that time was set up by geography, which makes good sense. Where do you
Mm-hmm.
live and work? Because why do you want to match with someone in Timbuktu? Let's be sensible. So the minute I changed my distance to 10 miles, this new profile came up. And what happened was I just could not look away from the screen. And I'm like, I know this man. And I'm reading the profile. I knew what he was going to say before he said it. And I just resonated at the deepest level. I was so thrilled and excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, I know him. I know him. I know him. So I email him, and he contacts me back pretty quickly. And he's having the same reaction. He's like, where do I know you from? So we then, by phone and by email, we're playing the game of every place we've lived and traveled, and every professional organization and everywhere we've worked. And we just can't find it. We like can't find where we've, met, but we knew each other. And the other thing that was, I'd never had any type of reaction like this to anyone else. I mean, sure, there were some matches looked interesting and I'd gone on a few dates, but this one was different. It was just off the charts of, I know this man.
Yeah.
And he had written as his last sentence in the dating profile something quite unusual. And he said, I'm especially interested in meeting any woman who is on a spiritual path, particularly someone who is open to or has had an LBL. And I'm like, LBL? I have no idea. So I'm Googling, before I wrote to him the first time, I'm Googling what's an LBL. And I found it right away. Life Between Lives, which is Dr. Michael Newton, who wrote Journey of Souls and Destiny
Mm-hmm.
of Souls. He created this 4-hour amazing technique called Life Between Lives, where you travel up in your pure soul state, very similar to an NDE. You travel home and you have these amazing adventures where you reunite with your soul group, and you learn why you chose your body, and you learn what your soul contracts are. And it's just this amazing experience. So my new match was just getting ready to go for his second LBL, because he'd had one several years before, and it was so life changing and so life enhancing for him that he was going for a second. So when I wrote to him, I said, is this Michael Newton's Life Between Lives? What are you referring to? Are you talking about the Journey of Souls? And he confirmed it. And I said, okay, I just ordered the book. And then again, perfect timing. It took 3 weeks for us to meet, just trying to sync up schedules. And we're both traveling for business a little or whatever's going on. So it takes 3 weeks to meet for lunch on a weekday. And I've just finished the book. And reading Journey of Souls, it talk about a spiritual wake-up call, that in combination with I'm now literally meeting the man that has the soul contract to wake me up spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I didn't even know this was a thing. I didn't know any of this was possible. So the world is just shifting and changing very, very quickly for me. And I'm starting to really incorporate what had happened in that NDE, because I just kind of put it in a box because it was so powerful and so lovely and so helpful, but I didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
So now I'm like unpacking it and starting to like draw all the parallels. So the very first time I saw him walk into the restaurant, again, it's like, I know him. I know him at the deepest level, not just how he looks. I know how he walks. I know his voice. And I just was glued in place. I'm sitting on the bench in the foyer of the restaurant. I can't stand up. That's never happened to me before or since. I'm like glued in place, just like looking up at this tall man who luckily has the sense to, he just dropped down on his knee in front of me. And he's looking like right in my face saying, I know you. Let's just figure out what the connection is. So he took my hand, which got me unglued from my seat. And we went in and had a 3-hour lunch, which is not exactly the norm. And we realized it's past lives. We've just known each other in so many past lives. So we then spent 8 years working through 19 past lives together.
Wow. And did you do, when you were together, did you, when you were, I know obviously you worked through some stuff being in that relationship, did you also pursue more LBLs sessions and that sort of thing?
Yes, that's a fantastic question. So because he knew that I had so loved Journey of Souls and was so open, he was very open and shared the process that he was using to prepare for his life between lives. And he shared the results of it and what he learned with it with me. And I was just so interested, but you need to have a past life regression first before you have a life between lives. So I was looking for a hypnotherapist to do that. And he found the perfect hypnotherapist for me. And I actually booked it. I had it about a year after we met because I needed to save the money. And I was trying to prepare myself, not knowing really how to prepare because I didn't have a spiritual practice. I didn't meditate, super busy, high anxiety, type A, super stressed. This does not have ideal past life regression client written all over it. Didn't know how to release expectations, but I was just so, it just moved me. I could just so feel it in my heart that I was meant to have one. And I thought, well, I'm just going to sign up and just have to, you know, just see what happens. And the hypnotherapist that he chose, it was one he'd wanted to go to, but she had a long wait list. And that was fine with me because it gave me time to save the money. And I spoke with her by phone because I knew I really wanted to hear her voice and feel her energy. It wasn't sufficient to me to just read a website and read some testimonials. I mean, that's great research, but I highly recommend people need to talk to and hear anyone that they're considering doing a session with. You've just got to have that energy match together. And she was fantastic on the phone. And she also was just very astute. And I was kind of doing this happy dance of how fantastic life was and how everything was just, you know, rainbows and unicorns. And she just called me on my BS right away. And she said, well, then why would you possibly want to do this type of a deep dive session? And I said, oh, good point. Now I need to get real in the conversation because I was kind of like glossing over it. And I thought, yeah, she's the right person for me to have the session with. So I had that past life regression, and it was so powerful. In 2 hours, I was able to release, let's see, I would have been 50 at the time. I was able to release 50 years of anxiety. Never have had anxiety again.
Wow.
And I'm talking about the daily,
Yeah.
not helpful anxiety. I mean, sure, at certain times we should have the gift of fear or should be, paying attention. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the buzzkill, constant, everyday anxiety about way too many things.
Yeah.
That type of anxiety. So that I was able to release. I was able to see some scenes earlier in this lifetime and really clean them up. I hadn't realized how bothered I still was by them. So she helped me with those, and I just reframed them and released them and started doing some forgiveness work for other people as well as for myself. I just started lightening up. It's like I was unpacking baggage I didn't need and taking chains off myself. So it was very, very liberating. And I saw not one, but two past lives and was very surprised by that. And she gave me great advice and said, just write down what you remember, just rest and relax and just journal about it and write it down. And maybe you'll have an interesting dream. Maybe something will more fill in. And that's exactly what happened was I was adding and adding and adding to that story because she gave me permission and gave me that technique. So that was amazing. And right when I was in her office, I said, great, that was fantastic. I cannot thank you enough. I'd like to sign up for an LBL. I'm ready to sign up for an LBL. And she's looking at me going, no, you would normally do a whole series of past life regressions and you would know how to meditate. And I was like, well, is that an absolute requirement? Because I'm hearing, because at that point I was hearing my guides again very clearly, and they were saying, book the LBL, see if she'll book it with you for 1 year from now. And we will help you in the meantime figure out what your process is. So she's looking through the paper manual book. She didn't have computer booking at that time. She said, I don't even think my calendar goes that far.
Yeah.
But we did book for a year later, and I had an amazing life between lives. I actually transcribed it because I so wanted to understand everything. 65 pages of information.
Now, what kind of information does come through in an LBL? What is it that you specifically, um, I don't know, see, learn,
Sure.
feel?
Great question.
Mm-hmm.
It's whatever that person most needs, but there are typical things that come up quite often. So for instance, I was able to learn more about my life purpose. I was able to reunite with my soul family. That was a really big deal to me to be able to do that again. And she had me call them up one by one, and I was able to name many of them and recognize how many of them I've reincarnated with. And that was a really big deal because people might only reincarnate with a couple people or even none from their
Mm-hmm.
primary soul group. And I've got a really, I think I've identified 20 out of 22. So two may not be here in this lifetime, or maybe I'll still meet them yet. I don't know. But you get a lot of healing, and you go to the perfect healing place for you. So she suggested different places, and there's this process of calling in a guide for you. So the guide is then speaking through you and narrating. This is so different than a psychic reading.
Yeah.
Where a person is doing their best to interpret and tell you what they see, but it's always going to be through their lens and their filter. And then you're left with, okay, what's accurate, what's not accurate,
Mm-hmm.
unless you really know how to discern that type of information. But it's very empowering when your higher self is speaking through you. You're speaking as your soul, or you're speaking as your guide. And a hallmark is when you switch to third person. Because at first, when I was listening to my recording, I'm like, well, that's me clearly, but I sound different. I sound so much wiser and more chill, much more slowed down. And I'm saying some very profound things, and I'm answering this list of questions that I shared with her, because you're invited to write questions for your own higher self and guides to answer. Again, it's not the therapist giving you a psychic reading, they're facilitating your own soul wisdom bubbling up and being verbalized, which is why you want to record it.
Right.
So we recorded it on my iPhone, so I'd have the information, and that's what I transcribed. So other things you can learn is why you chose your body. You can also go back to the womb, and spend some time in the womb and learn how and if you were communicating with your mother, your father, or other people. You can learn when the soul chose the parents and how and why you chose your parents. And you can learn when your soul permanently chose to stay with the fetus during the gestation period. So, what month was that, or what week was that? Because the soul can be going in and out, particularly when mom is sleeping. Because it's not especially exciting. The soul
Yeah.
can do more exciting things at home. But I found out, for instance, that I came in, quote, early at 3 months gestation and stayed full time. And she asked me why I did that, the hypnotherapist. And I said, because I have to adjust to this body. And I've chosen a body that's kind of small physically. And I've got this big high energy, and it's going to be like a kind of like a little container for me. And I also have to adjust to, she's going to have severe scoliosis, and that makes it harder for me to fit in that body. So
Mm.
I'm staying to really acclimate and get used to my body and get used to my parents. So
Right.
you can just learn fascinating things like that. You can learn what job you have at home, what you do at home. We're not just
That's
floating around
cool.
on clouds eating
Yeah.
bonbons. I mean, sure, you can take all the time you want to do that, but I think you get bored with that at a certain point.
Yeah. I know. I
you've
always wonder that.
healed enough.
Right.
So I found out what my job was at home, which is working in the Akashic records, and helping bring people's book of life to them, and helping show them the right information in it if their guide wasn't interpreting it for them. Because usually people come to the Hall of Records with a guide or an angel or someone with them, because can be very overwhelming on their own. But if not, I was their librarian, so to speak, and just
Mm-hmm.
really guiding them of what they needed to know in that book of life. So we just learn so many things about our soul, and as I said, it's different for everyone, but you can kind of draw the analogy of doing a between lives session or a life between lives session, which is specific to Michael Newton and the Newton Institute. It's kind of like there's maybe 12 most frequent stops on the train. And most people do take the stop of going to the Council of Elders, and it's not scary. You just discover that these are these wise human beings. You're not being judged in any way, because Council of Elders can kind of sound like, oh, I'm going into this court of law. Am I going
Yeah.
to be judged? And it's not that at all. But they debrief some of the past lives that you've experienced during the session. And the therapist might be asking them, well, did she get her life lesson? How did she do? Is there anything she's continuing to work on? Is there anything you can suggest for her to do better? They might ask you to do your own review. They might ask you to do that first and say, how do you think you did? And
Right.
we discover who's the harshest critic. It's always
Right.
us.
Oh, yeah.
Always
Just like you
us.
said, when it's a council of elders, we always think of a job performance review because that's our frame of reference. Like, oh no, what
Right.
are they going to say? I know I did some things I shouldn't have done. Are they going to make me, revisit it? But it's just when people describe the life review, they always describe it as there's no judgment. They're just putting you
Correct.
back there and having you experience it again from both your perspective and the person who you were engaging with at that time so that you can feel the full sense of what they were feeling and how your actions affected them and how you felt. And just it's just a review, it's just
Exactly.
an objective review to help you to help you see. And in our human uh, paradigm, it's hard for us to imagine, but nobody's yet judging me, or there's not a consequence. It's you need to see that just to have a
Absolutely.
whole understanding of the experience and why it happened, and what you could have done differently, and why you chose that path. And I think that it's one of those things about the other side that we can imagine it objectively, but when we're not going to really understand it until it happens to us, how that's possible, how
Exactly.
it just is. And I take
That's
your word for it.
that's so well put, Shannon. And I think the movie, it was meant to be a comedy, but I think the movie Defending Your Life,
Just watched it because I wanted to review it. Yeah.
they get it so right in that movie. So someone, I mean, I don't know if it's producer, director, screenwriters for that, someone
Yeah.
understands this concept. I'd be so curious if they'd had their own dream or NDE or Life Between Lives
Me
session,
too.
because they really get it. They really get it right in that film.
Yeah, some people kept tell I knew about the movie, and I think I might have watched it I don't know, forever ago, but or parts of it, but I never people kept bringing up that movie as you have
Yes.
to see this movie, and I watched it, and it is a bit dated. Of course, Meryl Streep, I mean,
Sure. The
um
technology looks, kind of dated and old, but that's
and
okay. The
Albert Brooks, but it's
concepts are there.
exactly, but the concepts, I'm like, oh, they really understand. I see
Mhm.
why it's been recommended for that same reason. So now I know that after I know your story of kind of what um led you to writing the book, which you can share as well. At what point did you say, I want to do this for other people? I want to provide this
Yes.
service for other people.
That's a great question. That came up pretty quickly. So I had the one past life regression. A year later, I had the Life Between Lives. 6 months later, I was building momentum from that. 6 months later, I had two quantum healing hypnotherapy sessions in the same summer, um, and got a lot of physical healing from those. And at that point, I knew. And it's like, I'm meant to retrain. I'm meant to become a hypnotherapist specializing in past life regression. I didn't have any interest or pull to weight loss or smoking cessation or anything. It was absolutely past life regression for me. And that job at home of being in the Akashic records, in with all those past life memories, it just was a perfect fit too. It's like, this just keeps coming back to the same place. So
Right.
I knew at that point. And then unfortunately, I got in my way a little bit, because the girls were late high school, heading toward college. And I thought, oh gosh, I must be meant to do this when they get out of college, because how am I going to pay for this and get the
Yeah.
time? So I got in my own way for a bit, and wasn't making any progress on. I looked at a couple programs, and it was just, there was no correct fit. There was no good fit that I could just, feel in my heart. When you just feel your heart sing, and it's like, this is the one. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I am bringing up all these self-limiting beliefs around it. And I have to call myself out for saying, this is too hard. It's going to cost too much money. It's going to take too much time and energy. And I don't have those things. I just turned it around, and I just said to my guides, because by that point I was meditating. I got sent home after the Life Between Lives session with an absolute imperative: learn how to meditate. Both
Yeah.
from the therapist and from my guides. It just really came through. In fact, what then happened before I even took a step to do it, my best friend, I mentioned it to her, and she said, I absolutely want to do that. She went and found the course, researched it, and signed us both up. So that just, once you get out of your way, it's just
Yeah.
like boom, boom, boom. Same thing happened with the hypnotherapy training. Once I got out of my way and said to my guides, I love this idea. I really feel this passion. I'd love to serve in this manner. It must have been 3 days later that someone contacted me, a friend contacted me who was herself a hypnotherapist. And she said, I want to introduce you to this gentleman in the UK. He's taking just 10 students to train one-on-one. He's got 20 years experience. He worked directly with Dolores Cannon, and he's looking for people who are very verbal and able to communicate well. And you're one of those people. So do you want me to introduce you? Because he's going to offer like this super great fee and it'll be one-on-one training. And I'm like, oh my gosh, yes. So I had the prelim interview with them. We just hit it off. And we then did that training and it was just affordable. It was perfect. I had all the scripts and all the information and just everything downloaded and printed out. And then I started practicing on my cat. So he got to do the session a couple times.
Great.
You
I've
know,
done
real
that with
world.
Reiki. I've done that with my Reiki training.
Yes, we got to
My cats have
practice.
received quite a bit of Reiki.
We've got to practice with someone. But I
Mhm.
heard something that happens for a lot of new hypnotherapists or past life regressionists is a shame is they get in their head after they do the training. And I wasn't going to let myself do that. So I'm like, okay, midnight and I've practiced a couple times now. It's time to just again open myself up and ask my guides, who can I help? Who can I serve? Let me do some, no charge. Let me do some complimentary sessions here and make sure that I choose people both that I can honor and help, but also that'll be very verbal and that won't be afraid to give me specific feedback. I don't need nice Nancy to just say, oh, it was fine.
Mhm.
I need someone that's willing to say, well, this didn't really work for me, or this part was great. So I just launched from there.
That's great. And I know that will you please mention or say the name of your book?
Yes. So I have two books. The
Yes, that's
first
right.
one, Regression Healing 1, The Huntsman, the Lord High Mayor, and the World War II Soldier, is nonfiction and it's an actual past life regression session. It's available on Amazon as well as on Audible because I have recorded the books also as audiobooks.
Oh, great.
And the second book is The Flow One Plymouth Plantation, the prequel, and it is historic fiction. It's also metaphysical fiction, but it's actually based on my past life in colonial America because I just had profound memories and I needed to work through that lifetime on paper was
Yeah.
where the energy release came from that.
That's wonderful. I know that the book is actually has a story behind it about how it came to be. Would you mind sharing that?
Yes, Regression Healing 1 was, I'm so grateful for it. And it's so funny looking back on it. We must amuse the heck out of our higher selves and guides.
Yes.
Just because we can just be so stubborn, like so not listening, so not acting on this great information we get. But I was just stuck, absolutely not moving forward with writing and publishing. And I was so stubborn about it. And I knew I was supposed to be doing it. I wanted to do it, but I couldn't figure out how and it scared me. So I started way too many projects. I had fiction and nonfiction and just was all over the map because I didn't know how to focus my energy in. So my guides took pity on me. And what happened was I facilitated my former boyfriend, who woke me up spiritually, that I met via Match. He had some significant physical pain and he had broken his neck and he had been a lifetime athlete in high contact sport. So a lot of issues, neck, shoulders, back, etc. And I had done, um, I'd been practicing for a couple of years and he and I were no longer dating, but still in touch as friends because we were still working through these past lives together and we'd contact each other whenever anything was coming up on those or, we were spiritual seekers together essentially after we were no longer dating. And I asked him if he would like me to facilitate a session for him to try and resolve that physical pain, as well as his guides kept coming to me. And I'm not a psychic medium. I am
Hmm.
psychic, but I am not here to function, serve as a medium. And his dad was like poking me on the shoulder, telling this, and his grandmother would come in. And I'm like, oh my goodness, no, I'm not going to be the interpreter and get it wrong. And
Yeah.
also, he needs to do his own work. He needs to connect with his own higher self and his own guides because it'll be much more empowering for him. So, for those two reasons, we agreed that I was going to facilitate a session for him. And then which honestly takes some trust. Who wants to have their who wants to have their former girlfriend,
Right.
do this soul level work? But luckily he had the trust and said, he was comfortable with my integrity and it would be a good experience for us both. So I felt really honored that we were going to do that. But my guides came in a few days before the session. Was I meditate and pray. Once I know what date it's going to be, I'm just working to get the energy to be as beneficial as possible for that person, because I want them to have the best possible session they can. And my guide said, by the way, that session is going to be the most difficult session of your life. And I'm like, oh, goodness. Okay. Am I meant to do it?
Mm-hmm.
And am I meant to do it at this time? And is there anything I can do to prepare, or anything else you'd like me to know? Besides, I will obviously be sharing this information for him too, in case he wants to opt out. Now that I'm being told this. And he said, okay, that's fine. Thanks for letting me know, but I still really want to do it. And I think it's awesome that you'll do this for me. And the only thing my guide said was, because there's so much energy between the two of you that you're still working to resolve, it may blow out the recording. So you should double record, which I'd never heard of doing and never thought to do. So I recorded with both my MP3 recorder, which I was going to then transfer onto his computer for him. So he'd have his own recording and I'd be all done. And I recorded with my fancy new iPhone that I barely knew how to use at the time. And I managed to find it had a recording utility on it. New phone, first recording. So we tested both devices. They're both fine. As we start that day. And he had a powerful, amazing session. He saw not only 3 past lives in a lot of detail. That's the Huntsman life and the World War II life and the Lord High Mayor. But he was able to connect with his higher self. And it was amazing because he'd not had a sense of his higher self, of his soul before.
Mm.
And for the two of them to come together and to be, they were just such guys about it. It was like guys in the locker room. It was hysterical. So they're like high-fiving each other. They're like swearing at each other. It was hysterical. It was just so male. To me as a female, kind of like drawing back, going, oh wow,
Yeah.
look at that. And he also was able to connect with his guides, and he found out why he couldn't connect with them, and we got that rectified and fixed up, because that's one of the things typically you pre-plan before your life, is how you're going to connect with your guides, but it doesn't always get done or remembered.
Mm-hmm.
So we got that fixed. And the other thing was, when he was really in a good level of trance, very relaxed and speaking well as his higher self or as a guide, he was drawing all these amazing parallels to our shared past lives, which I didn't expect at all. And that's unusual. You don't have to be doing a session with someone that you've known many times before. It's more unusual. But sometimes it does happen. There might be a past life that needs to be released between therapist and client, or there's just been a really positive one. And it's like so amazing to find like a long lost sibling or, best friend or whatever it might be. But we get to the end of his session and I ask him, well, how long do you think that was? And he's like, oh gosh, went way longer than I thought, because I know I'm not a good subject. I know I keep coming out of trance. And it was probably like 2 hours. I didn't think we could go more than an hour. It must have been like 2 hours. I said, look at the clock. And he about passed out because it was 4.5 hours. So there's a lot of information. And I knew that he consciously knew 2 hours worth of information,
Mm-hmm.
but had not been aware of the other 2.5. But I don't know which 2.5 hours that is. It's because, he's up and down in trance level. So I go to transfer the MP3 onto his computer. There's not a single word on it. There's nothing.
Wow.
So my heart is like pounding. I'm like, oh my God, I can't recreate all that. I've taken a lot of
Yeah.
notes, but I can't recreate that for him, and it won't be from him. So I'm pushing the play button on my phone, like, oh, please let the recording be there and be nice and clear on from both parties. Clear as a bell, but it's on my iPhone, and
Yeah.
I can't transfer it, and I can't get it off. So it's like, okay, don't panic. I can't give you my phone, but let me go to the store tomorrow. I'll go to the phone store. And they'll know how to do it. There's all
Yeah.
those wonderful tech wizard people. And they like push the button and they're like, what do you have on here? How can you have something 4.5 hours long? This phone isn't capable of recording that long. And they're asking me, well, what is this? I said, well, it's a client session. It's a proprietary client session. I can't be playing this out loud in the store, but I need to get this downloaded to my computer to transfer to the client or something. And they're like, it's not possible. So now I'm like stuck with a real quandary. And he's like, where's my session? Where's my session? I can't wait to hear my session. I'm like, I can't wait for you to hear it either.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to do. And we just didn't want to sit together and listen to it for four
Yeah.
and a half hours. It's very private. I know that sounds funny because we went through it together, but it just needed to be his. So all I could think of to do was to type it for him. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's a big job. But I really wanted him to have the info. So I said, I'll just type a quick and dirty transcript for you. Just, just get it done and email it over to you. And he says, oh, wonderful. That's so kind of you. I really appreciate it. So I do that for about 2 hours on a Saturday, and I'm just listening with the headphones on and just trying to transcribe it as accurately as possible. And I take a break, and I walk away from it and I come back to it. Here's one of the biggest surprises of my life. I expect to just look at his name and colon and what he said and then my name. Instead, I see a title of a book. I see by Wendy Rose Williams. I see I've started to lay out the chapters based on what I've typed. I see notes to myself like make sure to include a forgiveness resource guide at the end. I see other notes to myself that were just downloading from my higher self and guides that I had no idea were going to come through. So it became the first book because once I emailed it to him, I said, do you see this as a book? It's a really powerful, beautiful book. Are you willing to have me blind your identity and you read it carefully and change anything you want to make yourself feel anonymous and to not have things be too personal regarding family members and friends, because that's very commonly comes up in session 2. You're mentioning other people. I said, are you comfortable with that? And he said, oh my God, yes. Please publish it. I cannot tell you how many times my guides have told me you're supposed to help Wendy publish her first book. He's like, I can't wait to check that off the list. It's like,
Yeah.
at me
And
again
it's
and
done.
again and again.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible.
So that's what happened was surprise. And I'd been off writing fiction, but fiction is harder to write and I didn't know how to structure it. I have 1,200 pages. It's a trilogy, and then I wrote the prequel that comes before it. But that's all already done, and I'm just finishing up. I'm doing the editors worked with Regression Healing 2. Joe and Marilyn is getting ready to be published. It's off for formatting next week, so that'll be published in the next month or two. And I'm already
Congratulations.
writing
That's
Regression Healing 3 and 4. So luckily
finishing is a
fortunately they're
huge
coming
accomplishment.
more quickly now, because now I've got a system for here's the nonfiction series, here's the fiction series, and I know how they're rolling out. So as my
Right.
guides say, I keep getting out of my own way and just turning it over to them.
That's great. So
Mhm.
my I think this is my last question. When you had your NDE and they said you're not living your soul's purpose, what did you figure out that your life's purpose was? Or have you figured it out entirely? Is there
Yes.
still more to be learned?
I think it's still unrolling.
Yeah.
That's a great final question, Shannon. I think it's going to continue to unroll and to, just continue to be discovered. But I believe my life purpose is to help others with their spiritual awakening, because mine was not particularly a fun or easy. There were just a lot of dramatic events that went on. And I think just being able to help people, because a lot of fear can kick off because we're not in a culture, Western culture just doesn't make this easy. And a lot of us have been socialized through well-meaning family or church or whatever types of conditioning we've gone through, that a lot of this type of work is wrong or evil or not what we're supposed to be doing, or it's work of the devil. And I'm getting tired from all these quotes because it's like, wow, we just have to believe in our hearts, and we know what's right,
Mhm.
and everything's energy, and it's just a personal choice, what belief system you form. But I was not expecting to have my belief system just completely be torn apart, and to so embrace the concepts of spirituality and reincarnation and past lives and psychic abilities. That was not even on my radar.
Yep. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. It takes so much vulnerability to put yourself out there, share your experiences, and I am so grateful that you said yes to this interview. I'm really excited to have met you and to have heard your story firsthand. And I do think that the reason I'm doing this is that, like you, it's really about sharing that message. People are going to choose. There are going to be skeptics. There are going to be people that don't feel comfortable with the concepts out there. But I think that the people who are meant to hear the messages do hear the messages at the time when they're meant to hear the messages. So I think that it's doing such a service to share it and not make it something that's taboo to talk about, which in some circles it's not at all. But I think it's really nice to bring it out into the open, especially from people that are so clearly well spoken, rational, level headed people, average people that have had these not so
Yes.
average experiences. I think it lends so much credibility. Like, I was watching this documentary about people who believe they've been abducted by aliens and UFOs. And look, I'm completely open to it. I think I know someone who has had an experience like that. Um, but a lot of the people clearly had some mental issues going on already that I thought, see, this is tough because this takes away from any credibility because you can tell there's something else not right there.
Sure.
And I
Because
think
there
it's,
can be both things going on at the same
yeah, and
time.
they may have had these experiences too, but at the same time, it's really nice that there are so many regular, relatable people who've had these experiences and can say, look, I'm not crazy, myself included. It's like, even people who know me know I'm very down to earth and logical and reasonable, and I'm not crazy. So I think it does really help when someone, especially as articulate as you are, and as level headed and relatable as you are, can share a story that's so extraordinary. And I've said this before, that's why I called this channel Magic is Real, because life is magical. And I think often we take that for granted, that, oh yeah, there's clouds and a rainbow and there's some trees and some flowers, and there, people can mate and create a whole other being. But I don't believe in spirits, and it's like, but look what's going on around us. There's magic everywhere. And I think that having these conversations just kind of offers so much hope and inspiration that death isn't really an ending. It's actually just a transition. I think it's very comforting. It is for me. And I think it is for so many others. So I really appreciate you putting yourself out there and sharing. And again, will you please share your website, which I will also link
Yes.
below?
My website is my full name, which is wendyrosewilliams.com. And people are welcome to request a complimentary 15-minute phone appointment and just talk about how I may be of service to you. And I so appreciate that wonderful summary, Shannon, because yes, just keeping this information and experiences grounded, because we are here in a physical body, we are here on this planet at this time, and there's no substitute for experiences. So if you had told me that I was going to have experiences with UFOs, I would have said, "You're nuts." That would have been my response. And I wasn't looking for them, but they did occur. And I then did have to make sense of all those. So yes, just being super grounded. And the lead, the hypnotherapy lead that I give to clients is that we're going to look for the time and place with the most healing and information for your life today, because that's the whole point. It's not helpful to find, oh, maybe you used to be Cleopatra's 32nd maid. It's just, well, so what? That's just not helpful.
No.
We just need to get people where they're able to enjoy their life to the best of their ability. And just that's our freedom, is just choosing our belief systems and choosing to make the best of things so that we see them as happening for us, not to us, so that we get out of that victim martyr place.
I love that so much. I love that they're happening for us, not to us. Well,
Yes.
thank you again, Wendy, for your
Thank
time and
you.
energy today. My absolute pleasure, and I look forward to. I am going to get that book. And so, and again, you can look her up at Wendy Rose Williams. It's just.com.
Yes.
Did I get that right? Great.
Yes.
Okay. Well, have a lovely evening, and thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Bye.